Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hey everybody, this is the Digital Asset Investor, and I went fishing yesterday. If there's any silver lining in the quote current events that have been going on, it is that it's kind of forcing us all to get out and do things that aren't in centers where there's a lot of people, and so it has provided, I guess you would, I don't know if the word's opportunity, but I have taken advantage of the situation and gone and done some things with my sons that I normally would not do. I mean, I would take my sons fishing, but we're going out of our way to find things like that to do now. Just as an interesting thing, where I live, they are even trying to prevent us from going on to baseball fields. So I'm currently finding myself in a situation where I have to go and find outdoor batting cages to go throw baseballs to my sons, and if they see me there, there's a good chance the police will tell me to leave. But here's the deal: they're going to have to tell me to leave because I'm not stopping this train as far as throwing baseballs to my sons. We've done it 3 times a week since my youngest was 5 years old. We've hit baseball 2 buckets of balls 3 days a week. Year round, and I'm not stopping it. These boys, one way or another, we're going to see it through high school on the baseball front. Okay, now I got some interesting things today. I'm going to go further into BlackRock because I think BlackRock is a very interesting company in this whole scene. But first, let's start with some things I found in the news. Marty at XRP_Marty Y sent me this. This Vitsavend has put his, I mentioned it the other day, there's some app is now in the app stores, and this is like a beta version, but they did a video on this, and I was going to show you some of this.
So what usually happens with crypto wallets is you have your own crypto wallet, and then there's
Let me
the crypto
refresh
wallet.
that. Let me refresh that. It's been sitting there for a while. Let me start this back over.
You can
It was
download
about,
them right now.
let's go to about
Destination tag by the XRP to the transfer. It's just an amount. So how do you link it to like a specific purchase or order, or maybe settlement for dinner with friends or whatever? And this is exactly why we made some, and
well, it looks like it wants to stall out on me here. Let's try that again. Anyway, I'm not going to sit here and spend a lot of. Let me try it one more time.
Needed solving to allow the XRPL to be used for payments. So if you take a regular use case like a checkout in a store, in an online store or a retail store, or maybe paying for a parking meter, it doesn't start with you wanting to send funds. It starts with you wanting to get something, and the other party wants payment for them to give it to you. And the way we solve this with some is that there's either a QR code you'll have to scan or a push notification, and then you open it. And it has been initiated by the party that actually wants to receive funds from you. And when I say receive funds, that's in case of a payment, which is the most common transaction type probably. But this actually works for all transaction types supported on the XRPL. So we're talking creating escrows, releasing escrows, setting up trust lines, right, to allow you to hold other currencies, and even signing in, identifying with your XRPL account. So this can be really useful for, let's say, exchanges as a primary login or a 2-factor authentication. And I'm going to show you what it looks like, where we have my browser screen here on the upper left. We have something that the developer or app developer or a plugin developer for.
Okay, I'm not going to show you any more of that. I just wanted to show you that is up there. If you want to go see it, you can go to @Vitsavend and you can watch all of this on his this app that they've developed. Very smart guy, and I'm sure that this is going to be a big deal in the coming years. He's also, by the way, for those of you that don't know, he is a developer that's funded by, I believe, Spring, which is Ripple's funding arm. So he's a big part of history. Okay, Michael at VAL 5 weeks. A new job opening at Ripple is revealing the company's ambitions to build a trading platform connected to its XRP powered cross-border solutions, payment solution, on-demand liquidity. And this is in reference to a job opening from Michael at VAL 5 links, engineering manager on-demand liquidity. And it's really this part right here. Ripple is growing rapidly, and we're looking for a results-oriented, hands-on engineering leader to help build the next generation of payment platform that enables banks to instantly settle cross-border payments to create the Internet of Value. Ripple's distributed financial technology outperforms today's bank infrastructure by driving down costs, So apparently they're looking for someone to help build this platform. Okay. This was a tweet that I saw from Marcus Treacher. Digitizing payments, getting away from handling cash, is the best way to help people remit money abroad in these difficult times. And then Naveen Gupta, he's retweeting this. We are all in this together. Let's work harder to digitize, remove friction, and lower costs of remittances for migrant workers. Migrant workers count the cost. I'm not going to say that because that's a dirty word. But anyway, the point is that these guys are talking in terms of getting rid of going cashless, and this being a benefit of what Ripple is doing. Big deal. All right. Let's go. Michelle Vandenberg sent me this. Let me do a refresh. I thought this was pretty wild when I saw this yesterday. Listen to this.
Right now is to, my full-time objective right now is to make sure this administration does everything we can to get this money into the economy quickly. That's a combination of small business loans that will be available this week. And let me just be clear, this is not just normal SBA lenders. Any FDIC bank, any credit union, any fintech lender will be authorized to make these loans subject to certain approvals.
So any fintech lender, that was out of nowhere. I didn't know what in the world he was talking about there, but fintech lender, it can't be a bad thing for the direction that this industry is all going. Okay, now this was from Cryptopolis, and I thought this was worthy of showing you. This is an older article, but he's bringing it to people's attention. Harry Dent is one of the guys that says he predicts the winners will be the crypto equivalents of Amazon. Ripple is real business. But this is one of the guys that's been predicting a lot of this economic collapse that I think we're watching for a long time. But this article is from back in 2000, I believe it was 2018, yeah, February 5th. But I had forgotten this, but he did say this. He said, Dent believes in the future of blockchain technologies that make financial transactions more efficient, but predicts the winners will be the cryptocurrency equivalents of Amazon that survived and grew despite the dot-com bust. He suggests Ripple may be one that outlives the impending crash. Ripple is about people in the U.S., immigrants transferring money much more cheaply to relatives in Mexico, he says. That's a real business. So anyway, he's basically saying Bitcoin's not going to solve a problem, and therefore Ripple is the type company where they're actually doing something and solving a problem. Okay, now let's move on to this economy. One thing I'm paying close attention to is Jim Rickards, I believe, is one of the smartest guys that has called all of this for a long time. He's starting to pop up on YouTube with doing a lot of interviews where he's telling people what he thinks is going on. And when he speaks, I listen. So I've brought out some clips. This is from a recent interview on March 18th. There's 3 clips out of this video I want you to hear. Okay, here's the first one.
The New York Stock Exchange was closed from roughly August 1st to December 1st, 1914. So there you had a case where it was closed for 5 months. And so when people say, well, these things will never happen, well, the answer is they have happened, and they do happen. The market was closed for, I think, 4 or 5 days after 9/11. For that matter, the market closes every weekend. So So these kinds of market closures are not out of the question, and they have happened. But the point I was making, this is where the ICE 9 analogy comes in. If you close one venue, and let's just say the New York Stock Exchange, because it's going straight down, the markets are disorderly, too much wealth is being lost, and they close the New York Stock Exchange. Those who need liquidity, those who want cash, will go to another venue. They'll start taking money out of their money market funds. Well, then what does that mean? Well, the money market fund sponsors have to sell assets, commercial paper, treasury bills, and other instruments to meet the redemptions. So then you have to close the money market funds. So then what do people do? Well, they'll go to the banks and they'll start taking all the money out of their bank accounts and the ATMs. And then, so they'll have to close the banks and close the ATMs. And the point is, it spreads from stock exchange to money market funds to banks to other venues, the same way that the original ICE 9 would spread from a river to the ocean to the entire world. That's a danger of this kind of spreading that you have to think about before you close the first venue. Closing the first venue.
I want to make one point here before I forget. This is something that many of you may not have thought about. If they close the stock markets and they close the banks, what is the one market that remains open? Well, we know that the crypto market is open 24 hours a day, all the time. It doesn't close. It's open. That's just something you need to be thinking about.
Won't do you any good if you're just going to go to other venues and have to close them also. So in effect, if you want to close anything, you might have to close everything, shut down the system, call a timeout, and then in some fashion reboot the system, perhaps with something like a new Bretton Woods conference or the intervention of the IMF, et cetera. So that's ICE 9 at a very high level and a very global level. So, but I don't think many people think of it this way. I described it in a lot of detail in my book. But if regulators are not thinking about it this way, they run the danger of walking into that trap of shutting one venue, perhaps the stock exchange, without understanding that all it's going to do is the demand for liquidity, the pressure, is going to go right to another venue. It's like water running down a hill. If it hits a wall of some kind, it's just going to divert around the wall. It's going to keep going. You can't stop it, but it might take an irregular path. So when people are panicky, when people are fearful, when they want money, they're going to find it. If you shut one venue, they'll go to another venue, and you'll have to shut that too. And that's the ICE 9. Now your question is, how close are we to that? Well, we're close. Again, the circuit breakers are good to a point. It was a good idea. By the way, the circuit breakers came into existence in the late 80s, early 90s, in the aftermath of the 1987 stock market crash, when the stock market went down 22% in one day. We see days now where it goes down 10% in a day, which is a lot. And maybe it does that 2 days in a row. So you can get these big drops, but 22% in one day had never happened. That was the largest one-day drop percentage terms in history. And they wanted to prevent that. They said, panic feeds on itself. And so when we have something like that, a panic in effect, we need to call a timeout, give people a little time to think, gather their thoughts, think about whether there might be some bargains out there, give regulators time to respond, give the president time to do a press conference, offer some reassuring words. And, it's like getting a good night's sleep. Sometimes you get spun up on a problem and you get a good night's sleep and you wake up and the solution's very clear. And that was the idea. And that was the idea of circuit breakers, and they seem to be working. But if it keeps going down, even with the benefit of the circuit breakers and a good night's sleep, then at some point they may have to shut the markets for the good of the markets. But that won't be the end of it, and that's really the point of ICE 9. And we're getting closer to that point.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the first clip I wanted to show you, and then there's another clip at around 12 right here.
That won't get people, out of their houses and spending money again. That's a completely different task. And so if you get to the situation where you've had to close banks and exchanges, how do you reopen them? And particularly if there's a loss of confidence in the dollar. Well, there's only one clean balance sheet left in the world. I mean, the problem with the Fed is they took their balance sheet from $800 billion to $4.25 trillion between 2008 and 2015. 2014. But they never got back to normal. They never got to anything close to, let's say $2.5 trillion or $2 trillion. And now they're back up over $4 trillion because of the new easing programs. So where is the invisible confidence boundary? Where is the point where, can you go to 4 trillion, 5 trillion, 6 trillion, 7 trillion? I mean, some people say yes. The modern monetary theorists say yes. Legally, it's possible, but in my view, that won't happen because there is this invisible barrier where people just wake up one day and say, wait a second, what's going on here? I'm not an economist. I'm not a monetary expert, but I want to get out of the system. Give me some gold, some silver, real estate, fine art, something tangible. I no longer have confidence in the dollar. Well, who's going to restore confidence? Where will the liquidity come from? Maybe that's a better way to put it. And the answer is the IMF has the ability to print special drawing rights. That's world money. Now, it's not what we call walking around money. You're not going to have any, and I'm not going to have any. We're not going to use it to pay for dinner, but it can be given out to countries. And it can also, not many people know this, but I've read the relevant articles and bylaws. It can be given out to multilateral institutions. The IMF could print SDRs and give them to the United Nations, for example, as well as their member countries. And so it may come to that. So you may see 1 trillion SDRs printed up and handed out to countries around the world and or to the United Nations as a way to get the wheels turning again at a time when people have lost confidence in the dollar. We're not there yet, but again, we're getting uncomfortably close.
Yeah. Okay. And then the final clip was at the 14:45 mark. Listen to this.
That your ideal situation or solution for a monetary crisis would be a conference at Mar-a-Lago to set up a new gold standard, right?
Yeah, I use Mar-a-Lago as an example. I have a chapter in Aftermath called the Mar-a-Lago Accord, obviously after Bretton Woods Accord. And it's interesting. Mar-a-Lago, it's a little glitzy for my taste, but it bears some resemblance to the palace in Genoa where they had the 1922 International Monetary Conference. It's the idea would be that it would serve the purpose that the Mount Washington Hotel did. That was the place that hosted the Bretton Woods Conference in July 1944. By the way, I was up in Bretton Woods last summer in July to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the original Bretton Woods Conference. That's where I met with some of the central bankers I referred to earlier and a lot of other. Larry Summers was there, former Secretary of the Treasury, and Gillian Tett, very prominent financial journalist for the FT. So it was quite a gathering. But my point is, you're going to need to reset the system. You're going to need to have another international monetary conference. And I don't know how you do that without gold playing a role. I'm not saying that you're going to go back to a strict pre-1914 gold standard or even the kind of modified 1944 Bretton Woods gold standard, but I just don't know how you do it without using gold as a point of reference. And to me, this explains what we've seen in the last 10 years, where China has tripled its gold reserves. Russia has tripled its gold reserves. Many other countries around the world are buying gold. The United States has not sold any gold, any official gold, since 1980. We stopped selling. What the United States did, we put pressure on other countries to sell their gold. So you saw the UK sold about more than half, close to 2/3 of their gold in 1999. Between 2000 and 2006, Switzerland sold 1,000 tons. In 2010, the IMF sold 400 tons. So we were getting everyone else to dump their gold, but if I were any of those countries, I would have turned to the United States and said, hey, why don't you guys sell some? But we never did. We held on to ours. But meanwhile, who was buying? Well, it was Russia and China, Kazakhstan, Mexico, Philippines, Vietnam, Azerbaijan. A lot of countries are buying gold. Poland bought a lot of gold. Turkey, Iran. Not only that, but they're also repatriating their gold. A lot of this gold I'm describing was stored at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York or the Bank of England in custody. It didn't mean it belonged to the United States, but we were holding it for these other countries. Well, one by one, they're calling up and asking to get their gold back, and the Fed has been delivering. But a lot of gold is a little bit of a run on the bank as far as gold is concerned at the Fed and the Bank of England. So when you see the price of gold going up, when you see central banks buying, becoming net buyers rather than net sellers, when you see people asking for their physical gold back because they want custody in Frankfurt or Warsaw or Baku or someplace other than New York, I think it tells you all you need to know. So when this conference comes, whether it's at Mar-a-Lago or someplace else, your seat at the table is going to be determined by the amount of gold you have. So the people who are going to be sitting at the table will be the United States, China, Russia, maybe the European Central Bank. If you combine all the members of the Eurozone, if you combine them, they have more gold than the United States. They have over 10,000 tons. The United States has 8,000 tons. The people who are going to be sitting, on the wall and the seats lined up against the wall are going to be, important countries like Canada and Australia, maybe even the UK, that unfortunately have sold all their gold and don't have any reserves. They'll be in the room, but not at the table, so to speak. So we'll see what happens. But and this won't happen tomorrow. I'm not predicting that, but we are moving in that direction.
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to show you that video. I think he really is outlining how a lot of this stuff is going to go down. Now, this is what we talked about the other day this was brought, I believe Peter Voss had brought this back to my attention. BlackRock, which is the largest asset management firm in the world with roughly $7 trillion in assets under management, has long declared an interest in cryptos. Up here it was saying they're recently hired a former executive of Ripple who's tasked with leading the digital asset team in the firm. This is that Robbie Mitchnick that we talked about. Says he's one of the best minds behind Ripple. And he was also the guy who had created that XRP valuation framework. So I decided maybe I'd go and look a little closer at BlackRock. And in the midst of doing this, one thing was something that I had covered in the last few weeks. I was reminded of, and I'm going to show you that in a video here in a second. But first, I decided to start with the BlackRock board of directors so we can all kind of understand that all of these people, as I've been saying for the last month or so, all these people everybody's interconnected, and they're all connected to some of these organizations that we've been talking about. The first, of course, we would start with Larry Fink. We've talked about this before. He's on at the World Economic Forum. He's one of the guys on the board of trustees right there. Okay, we've talked about that. Then you've got this guy. I skipped around here and was just kind of going. I would find one that had some interesting things, and then I would kind of focus in on that. This William S. Dimchek, president and CEO of PNC Financial. Now, for those of you that don't know, PNC was Ripple's first live customer. So this guy was at JP Morgan. He's got, all kinds of experience. He's at PNC. That's a direct tie. That's someone who would know all about Ripple. Now, down here, look at this. It says, according to Blythe Masters, head of global commodities at JP Morgan Chase, who worked with Dimchek. Now, remember who Blythe Masters is, folks. She's the one that left JP Morgan and went to create Digital Asset Holdings, which then bought Hyperledger and then spun it out into an open source whatever. Okay. But Blythe Masters, head of global commodities at JP Morgan Chase, who worked with Dimchek, he changed the way the bank and our clients managed credit exposure. So he's connected to Blythe Masters. He's also at PNC. These people all know each other, folks. All right. And then we've got this right here. Jessica Einhorn is a very interesting character. She's at Johns Hopkins University, but she's also, let's see what it says here. After serving vice president, well, first of all, she was managing director, finance and resource mobilization at the World Bank. And then prior to coming to the bank, Ms. Hines, she served in the U.S. Treasury, the U.S. State Department, and the International Development Corporation. She's also, she's a trustee at this, and then I think I missed something. But anyway, she's also at the Council on Foreign Relations, which is what this website is, or at least some kind of contributor there. She's also on this advisory board at Rock Creek. And she's on the board with Alan Greenspan, who's the former Fed chair of the United States. So that's pretty interesting. And then this guy's also on the BlackRock board, William E. Ford. Who is William E. Ford? CEO and Managing Director of General Atlantic. So let's start going through William E. Ford and see if anything jumps out. Well, a couple of things jump out. Ford, he was previously at Morgan Stanley. And then down here, let's see. Down here, he's director at General Atlantic, First Republic Bank, NICE, Euronext, E-Trade, Priceline, NYMEX. And then as we come down here, this guy is also a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. Let me see if there's anything else that jumps out about this particular guy. I think that's about it with him. And it's possible for me to miss something that I meant to bring out to you, but I think that's it on that one. All right, and then let's go to this one, Gordon Nixon. Gordon Nixon is down here, former president and CEO of RBC. Now, RBC, that's the Royal Bank of Canada. That's really all I want you to get out of this guy. Remember, Royal Bank of Canada. So this guy's on the board, and he's the former president and CEO of Royal Bank of Canada. And then we've got this Chuck Robbins guy. Chuck Robbins, he's a businessman, CEO of Cisco. And if you, actually, he's born in Grayson, Georgia. That's not too far from where I live. Chuck Robbins, let's see. I want to make sure I don't miss the important part here. As we go down, boards and affiliations. Robbins serves the World Economic Forum as the chair for IT Governors Steering Committee and as members of the International Business Council. Let's see what else. If he's here's another one. He is also right here. He's a member of the International Council for the Belfer Center of Science and International Affairs at Harvard University. So he's at the World Economic Forum, and he's a member of the International Council. This is from the Belfer Center at Harvard. Well, that's the same Belfer Center that from this right here that we showed you last week. Remember this? The Digital Currency Wars, a national security crisis simulation at Harvard with all of these players like Larry Summers and all these Gensler and all these people. Well, this guy is one of the members of that. All right. And then this was brought to my attention by I Am Legion. BlackRock Digital Assets Group. This is just another connection between Ripple and BlackRock. Shares Post. Senior Ripple veteran Vijay Chetty joins Shares Post Digital Assets Group. Says prior to Shares Post, Chetty spent more than 3 years focusing on developing successful scaling the XRP ecosystem at Ripple. This included leading partnership initiatives for Ripple, which include deals with major asset exchanges, wallet providers, custodians, aggregators, and financial institutions using XRP for settlement. Before Ripple, Chetty was on the investment team in BlackRock's fixed income investment group, where he focused on research and portfolio management for corporate securities and derivatives and funds totaling more than $60 billion in assets. So now we have one guy who left Ripple to go head the digital asset team at BlackRock, and then here's a guy who left BlackRock to go to Ripple. So you can see kind of that there's a back and forth here. All right, now let me see if there's anything else I'm missing here. I think that's plenty on that. All right, so now we have this tweet from XRP Monkey. 1/3 BlackRock, this is one of three. BlackRock merges with Merrill Lynch in 2006, giving Merrill Lynch 49% stake in BlackRock. PNC's stake is halved, about 22% of the stake. B of A acquires Merrill Lynch in 2008. B of A Merrill Lynch is directly correlated with Ripple and using their tech in a document that they want patented, right? So BlackRock merged with Merrill Lynch 2006, having PNC's ownership, Go along here. This is Bank of America to acquire Merrill Lynch, was accepted in 2008. Today, the company is known as Merrill Lynch Wealth Management and company is wholly owned subsidiary of BlackRock. This is the B of A patent. You'll remember Brad Garlinghouse was asked about this. He kind of smirked like, oh yeah, that's not supposed to be known. We know that Bank of America is in the mix big time with Ripple. It's right here using Ripple DLT. All right. So then here's the second part. BlackRock CEO talks about finding a way to exchange foreign currencies instantaneously. Trump mentions Larry Fink and BlackRock in his address to the nation and working out how to fix the economy. And then 3, PNC Bank, first U.S. bank on RippleNet. If B of A is using it, its subsidiaries will eventually be on the same track, all connected, bullish. All right, so let's go to the next thing. This is Larry Fink, okay, who's the CEO of BlackRock that we just talked about. Now, here's something you may not have known. Let's go to right here. The U.S. government, remember, it all tracks back to the financial crisis, folks. The U.S. government contracted with BlackRock to help clean up the financial meltdown of 2008. Although BlackRock is widely believed to have been the best choice for the cleanup job, Fink's long-standing relationships with senior government officials have led to questions about potential conflict of interest regarding government contracts awarded with competitive bidding. So let me stop here, folks. There was one other, remember the other bank who was integral in helping during and after the financial crisis? Remember the company? Do you remember the company? It was another bank who was used to help during the financial crisis because they were considered to be one of the handful of financial institutions which were strong systemically, right? And I floated to you that my thought pattern on all of this is that when the financial crisis happened, the most powerful banks and institutions, the ones that were the most stable, are the ones who have worked ever since with the U.S. government to bring about the change to the financial system that would put us in a place where we could solve / never deal with this problem again. And I believe I believe Ripple is right there with them. The other one that I'm speaking of was, yes, BNY Mellon. Remember this? This is post-merger. In October 2008, the U.S. Treasury named BNY Mellon master custodian of the Troubled Asset Relief Program TARP bailout fund during the crisis. BNY, they won this assignment, which included handling accounting and record keeping for the program through a bidding process. And then they go on to tell you that BNY Mellon was one of only 3 banks that could withstand a worsening economic situation. So I believe that BNY Mellon, as well as BlackRock, these two were brought in to be a part of solving all of this, folks. I don't think it's a coincidence that BlackRock hired a major Ripple guy in conjunction with all this. Okay, so let's go back. So here's Larry Fink, right? Now let's go to the next thing, just to kind of further drive this point home. BlackRock, this is an article from Forbes or New York Times. BlackRock, May 8th, 2008. BlackRock, the Mr. Fix-It of Wall Street. So this shows you now under Fink runs BlackRock, money man, but on that March weekend, the Federal Reserve Board, moving to diffuse a crisis threatening the American financial system, began turning to BlackRock to play a crucial role in the government-brokered rescue of Bear Stearns, the faltering investment bank. So the point I want you to get out of this is that BlackRock and BNY Mellon, these are the major institutions they turn to. It's not a coincidence that these two companies have all these ties to Ripple. Because I see Ripple as the solution. Then there was this. This is from, let's see. This is from March 25th, 2020. So this is 5 days ago. The Fed asks for BlackRock's help in the echo of 2008. BlackRock will advise the Federal Reserve on the purchase of billions of dollars in bonds and securities. The terms of the agreement were not disclosed. So who do they turn to again? BlackRock. Okay. Now, I'm going to show you this, and then I wanted to show you, we're talking about Bank of Mellon. Let's go back. This is from October of 2008. Bank of New York Mellon will oversee the bailout fund. And this is about what I told you just a second ago. All right, now let's go back to BlackRock. So BlackRock and BNY Mellon, these are the two that they turn to. Well, this reminded me of a Jim Rickards clip from the video I showed you not too long ago, where he's talking about what he calls ICE 9 and what's going to happen in the next financial crisis. Listen to this and listen close, folks.
Could you please share with our viewers where this threat is coming from and how to prepare?
Let's start with some background and context, because I know this must sound hard for some viewers to believe. I was having dinner with a friend not long ago in New York City. We met at a place called Oriole, which is in Midtown. My dinner companion that night was a senior advisor to BlackRock. As you may know, BlackRock is now the largest asset manager on the planet. It directly manages $5 trillion in assets, and it oversees another $11 trillion through its Aladdin platform. That means one firm controls more money than the GDPs of China, Russia, and Japan combined. Anyway, my dinner companion happens to work directly for BlackRock's CEO. As we nursed our white wine and the evening wore on, she let something slip. If I remember her words, she said something like, "They want to tell us we can't sell." What was she talking about? Who was she talking about? I placed a few calls, first to my contacts in Washington, then to a few people on Wall Street. Soon I was on a plane for a series of meetings to London, to Geneva, back to New York, then down to South America. As I began connecting the dots, a pattern emerged. It revealed a network of more than 189 individuals positioned inside the world's major financial institutions. Some of them hold senior positions inside the IMF, World Bank, and every central bank in the G20, including our own Federal Reserve. These elites share one vision, and they're about to make it a reality. That vision is one world order, one world taxation, and one world money. They've worked for years behind the scenes preparing to realize that vision. They've literally rigged the laws of international finance. Everything is basically in place right now, and there's essentially no way to stop this from happening. When the crisis hits, they'll flip the switch, freezing the global financial system. That will give them time to reset the world economy according to their vision. As the coming crisis unfolds, President Trump will be powerless to stop it. In fact, trying to stop them would probably weaken the president's power altogether.
That is amazing, Jim, really. So what did these elites want from your contact at BlackRock?
Basically, they want to classify BlackRock as too big to fail. The technical term is Systemically Important Financial Institution, or SIFI. That designation normally applies to banks, such as Bank of America. If your bank gets the SIFI label, it means the government will bail you out first in a crisis. But it also means you must turn over control of your bank until the crisis subsides. In this case, they're trying to reclassify BlackRock, an asset manager, as too big to fail. If they succeed, they'll be able to freeze BlackRock when the crisis hits. BlackRock clients won't be able to sell. They won't be able to buy either. Their accounts will go dark indefinitely. And the elite operatives will take control of BlackRock's assets remotely via the internet. But our research shows that their ICE 9 plan goes much, much deeper than that.
Now, you refer to their plan as ICE 9. You just said that. What does that mean?
It's a reference to the Kurt Vonnegut novel, Cat's Cradle.
I'm not going to go any further into that than that, but I wanted to show you that because I thought it was kind of weird that here with all of this road leads us to BlackRock, and all of a sudden I just remembered him talking about this. Okay, now there was one other thing I wanted to show you. I searched for BNY Mellon and BlackRock, and this article from April 3rd, 2019 just popped up. BNY Mellon and BlackRock partnered to deliver integrated technology and servicing capabilities across the investment life cycle. I just thought this was an interesting thing to take a look at. Now, to drive my point home, I don't think, I've never thought that the creation of Bitcoin and Ripple were a coincidence. The timing, to me, is everything. So you've got Bitcoin that's the financial crisis right there. You got BNY Mellon, you got BlackRock that are helping out in this financial crisis. Well, if I'm the U.S. government and I run into a 2008 financial crisis that is out of control, and I look at that situation and I say, okay, we can't let this happen again. So how do we prevent this? Well, who would you look to besides the two companies that you trusted in the crisis the most to help you out? BlackRock and BNY Mellon. So you've got 2008 crisis. Then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Bitcoin pops up in 2009. And then Ripple is born in 2012. And if you look at if you look at Ripple's timeline, founded in 2012, SBI Ripple Asia formed, Interledger Protocol launches, and then you've got the RippleNet Committee, right? What's the RippleNet Committee? Who's on the RippleNet Committee? It says since 2005, the Ripple and advisory team made up of a diverse set of leading transaction bankers have been building the rulebook, a common framework that ensures an operational consistency and legal clarity for every transaction. This group actively advises on maintaining and enhancing the rules and standards as RippleNet grows. Well, remember the guy on BlackRock's board he was the CEO of the Royal Bank of Canada? I don't think that's a coincidence. Well, let's look at I just took the two American banks on here, these two right here. Let's look, I think Westpac is American, but let's look at Bank of America. Who owns Bank of America? Berkshire Hathaway, Vanguard, BlackRock. You also have State Street, who is also an owner of SBI Holdings. You've got JP Morgan. So a lot of the big players are there. I decided to go look. What about Westpac? Who are the top holders of Westpac Bank? Maple Brown, and then BlackRock, Vanguard, BlackRock, right there, the second largest holder of Westpac, which is on the RippleNet committee. All right, I wanted to kind of finish this video up by showing you there's a lot of people who are kind of just coming in. A lot of people are freaked out at home watching YouTube videos and different things and trying to make sense of all this. So for those of you who are kind of new to this, there's a couple of videos that came from Ripple that I think are good videos for you to watch to get your mind around not only XRP, but also around 2020 and what the people at Ripple have said for what's coming in 2020. First, I wanted to show you this one. Let's start here.
So when we talk about the benefits of XRP, I would highlight the speed. So XRP is over 1,000 times faster than Bitcoin in terms of the confirmation time. It is actually deterministic, the confirmation time. So whereas with XRP, all the ledgers close about every 3 seconds, 3.2 seconds. With Bitcoin, it's 10 minutes, but it's random. So it's like sometimes it'll be much faster, sometimes it'll be a lot slower. And what that means if you're using it for payments is you're actually exposed to a much greater range of volatility with something like Bitcoin than you would be with something like XRP. Another benefit for XRP is the cost. So every XRP transaction costs on the order of 1/10 of a cent, whereas like with something like Bitcoin or Ethereum, the cost would be much higher. So it could be on the order of dollars or even tens of dollars in the case of Bitcoin. So if you take all the different advantages for XRP taken together, higher quality hosting, higher quality validators, higher quality transaction processing, a lot faster, a lot cheaper. When you take all that together, what you end up with is the only digital asset that's actually ready for enterprise use.
Okay, that's one video I wanted you to see. Now the next one, for those of you that heard my video from Saturday, we talked about the fourth industrial revolution. And this is a video that I had forgotten that they mentioned in here, but you will hear a reference from a Ripple executive to the fourth industrial revolution. But I wanted those of you, especially those of you new, it's easy to get bogged down into the markets and how the markets are not doing well and all. But remember, it's Ripple that called 2020 the year of the digital asset. And so for that reason, I wanted to show you this video right here this is the Ripple Drop 17, where they recap 2019 and kind of talk about what's going to happen in 2020. It's important to keep your eye on the ball and watch videos like this as a reminder of what they have said. All right, here we go.
Some familiar faces, the executive team coming on to share what they think is going to happen in the future and what they learned from the past.
Brad, thank you for being on the Ripple Drop. Looking back on the last year, what surprised you the most?
I think what probably surprised me most in 2019 was how Facebook executed their Libra white paper announcement. I thought that there was an opportunity to do that better, to get a better outcome in the end, and I think it ended up having more headwinds than they might have had they executed differently. The other big surprise, by the way, is Donald Trump, our president, tweeted about cryptocurrencies in 2019. I would not have predicted that at the beginning of the year.
What was your aha moment for blockchain and digital assets?
I think the aha moment for me, without a doubt, was having spent maybe a year talking to the leadership team at MoneyGram and seeing the transition from skepticism to significant advocacy over the course of the year. It was really profound, and I think that there was some doubt, and then I think for them seeing it solving a real problem and hearing them talk about the work we're doing with MoneyGram on their earnings calls was certainly a big aha and very gratifying event in 2019.
Looking forward in the 2020s, the next decade, what do you expect for blockchain and crypto?
I think you're going to continue to see consolidation. The world doesn't need 3,000 plus cryptocurrencies out there, and I think the utility will bear out that there'll be a migration to quality, if you will, like technologies and cryptocurrencies that can scale with market demand, with real use cases. And I think you'll see consolidation where there'll be fewer than 3,000 for sure. We can argue about how low that number goes. I've said publicly that I thought 99% would go away.
What surprised you the most in 2019?
I would have to say both the growth that we saw in RippleNet and the kind of shakeout in the industry where a lot of the poorly thought out Me Too projects just kind of died out.
What was your aha moment for blockchain and crypto?
I mean, it's got to be when I first found out about Bitcoin. I was just looking to see like what was going on in the world generally, and I found Bitcoin, and there was a point where it just clicked in my head.
And what about looking forward? What do you kind of predict is going to happen in the 2020s?
I always hate to try to predict the future, but I think we're going to see more growth of blockchain into different use cases. I think the focus is going to be on, can you solve an actual problem? Not do you have a solution that someone might be able to use for something, but do you have something that can solve an actual problem people have?
And looking back at the last year, what surprised you the most?
So I think what I found most surprising this year was the launch of Libra. Not that anyone was surprised that another big tech company was getting into payments, but really the response to the launch. And it seems to me now that it may end up not launching at all due to the way in which they were skirting regulatory issues and frankly the fact that it's associated with Facebook.
What was your aha moment for blockchain and crypto?
My aha moment for blockchain and crypto really came as I started to dig into the world of payments, and I realized that the way that digital payments work today is all of us are just passing around IOUs to everyone. Pretty much any payment you make, whether it's through PayPal or through Venmo or something like that, it's just a bunch of IOUs being passed, whereas actually with blockchain and with cryptocurrency, you can actually send true value through the blockchain and there's no intermediary, there's no IOUs involved.
Ethan, what are your predictions for blockchain and crypto in the next decade?
So I predict that over the next decade, we're going to see blockchain and cryptocurrencies really replace the entire underpinnings and the infrastructure of the entire financial system. And that the way that money moves, somewhere will touch a cryptocurrency, somewhere in that stack. It may not be end users using XRP or Bitcoin to buy things, but any payment that you make will touch blockchain, will touch a cryptocurrency in some form.
Ashish, looking back at the last year, what surprised you the most?
There are a lot of interesting things that happened in 2019. But I'm surprised how fast privacy has gone from something that people took and didn't care about to actually folks really care about how much Facebook and companies like Google own of your data. And I think privacy now becoming a mainstream topic of discussion is something that surprised me in 2019. I thought it was going to take a lot longer.
What was your aha moment for blockchain and crypto?
I remember around 2013, I was new to Ripple. Blockchain was sort of a concept, and folks were trying to figure out, what is this technology going to be really great at? And my aha moment was going down to Mexico in 2013 to meet with a team of developers, working out a basement. And this team of developers are showing me an application where they can move money instantly using cryptocurrencies around the world. And normally that kind of power was reserved for the largest banks of the world like HSBC and Citibank, but the team of developers, 3 or 4 folks, were able to do and achieve the same thing that was normally reserved for these mega powers around the world. And I thought this is going to be a really transformative technology, and I thought that maybe the first application of this would be moving money around the world.
Seems like you were spot on.
Well, yeah, so far so good.
So what does the future look like, in 2020 and even in the next 10 years?
Well, I think that, typically with new technologies, people overestimate the short-term impact of these technologies. And as we're seeing with blockchain is that, hey, I think folks were a little bit ahead of their skis here. But on the flip side, I think that folks are underestimating the long-term implications and impact that blockchain is going to have on everyday lives. And so, by the end of the decade, I really do think that, almost every financial application will be reinvented using this technology. It's just going to take a little bit longer than folks had anticipated to get going.
Marcus, looking back at the last year, what surprised you the most?
I think for me what surprised me was the pace at which we were able to build a global network, RippleNet, using the banks and payment companies around the world, moving with Ripple and adopting the technology.
Was there an aha moment for you for blockchain and cryptocurrency?
It was when we were able to deploy Ripple with on-demand liquidity for MoneyGram, and having MoneyGram use on-demand liquidity to fund a major corridor between the US and Mexico. Commercial flow, commercial use of a digital asset XRP, commercial use of the blockchain, that's a really big moment. And it's kind of like to me, it's the shape of things to come. It's really kind of trailblazing where I think many, many companies will follow throughout 2020 and beyond.
That's awesome. So looking forward, what do you think the future holds for blockchain and digital assets, in 2020 or even in the next 10 years?
I think the Internet of Value that we are creating is very much coming to life. And I can see blockchain technology merging into other core enabling technologies and together kind of creating the fourth industrial revolution. And we really are right front and center of that change with the work we're doing at Ripple and the way we're applying the blockchain tech, the digital asset XRP, the interledger model to real world problems. And you can see in terms of the network growth and the impact we're having, how quickly we're helping that shift occur and how quickly we're bringing this vision to life.
Looking back at the last year, what surprised you the most?
I think there are a few things that surprised me in this past year. I'd say the first is the degree to which Facebook and the Libra project really had the ability to catalyze global governments across the world to come together and start to understand the urgency around developing regulatory frameworks. I think the second thing was probably around consolidation. Binance alone, I think, made 4 acquisitions in the last 6 or 12 months, and I think that is a trend that we're going to continue to see, particularly on the exchange side. Another thing that we think about a lot at Ripple, and we've made some noise about, is the persistence of fake volumes in the industry, and that is a problem that has gotten a lot of noise and attention in the past year, but surprisingly, we haven't seen much progress being made, so that's something that we're going to continue to focus on in 2020. And then I think the last is really the fact that we are fortunate at Ripple in that we have the ODL product, which is the first at-scale, institutional-grade, utility-driven use case for digital assets. And we're super excited about that. It surprises me that there aren't more utility use cases on the digital asset side, but we're excited to build on ODL, and we here at Ripple are focused on new utility and use cases for XRP through our Spring initiative, and we're excited about new products to come in 2020.
What was your aha moment for blockchain and digital assets?
For me, it was very clearly the moment when I realized that the work that Ripple was doing was exactly what this industry needed. So before I joined Ripple, I spent a year at another blockchain company, and before that I spent 14 years in traditional finance at Goldman Sachs. And so in the year prior to joining Ripple, I spent a lot of time talking with institutional investors from sort of the old world and talking to them about what it would take to adopt digital assets. And I kept hearing, okay, well, I get the speculative nature of these assets and the ability to capitalize because of that from a trading perspective. But when I really think about it, my fiat works today. I have my euros, I have my dollars. Why do I need digital assets? And that was a question that was hard to answer. And so it made me realize that for a lot of the traditional investors, there were a number of hurdles, whether it's custody or security or what have you, but a real use case of why digital assets matter and why everyday investors need digital assets was one of the key missing components for the industry at large. And so when I realized that Ripple was working on this cross-border payments problem, solving the $10 trillion in trapped capital problem in Nostro and Vostro accounts, that was the aha moment for me, and I got super excited about the opportunity to work on a product that was solving real-world problems, delivering revenue and value to the bottom line for everyday companies.
What do you sort of expect from blockchain digital assets next year and maybe even in the next 10 years?
Yeah, so to the point about Wall Street and some of the, I guess, evolution there, I think in the next year or 5 years, I think we will see more traditional banks legging into the space a little bit more aggressively than they have in the last 12 or 24 months. Not just on the blockchain technology side, so not just using blockchain technology to improve efficiencies on, say, trade settlement or reducing fees around broken trades, etc., but actually thinking about using digital assets, building sales and trading desks, building custody platforms, building prime brokerage platforms, full service suite offerings around digital assets. In addition, I think we might see central banks with greater adoption rates around the concept of using digital assets as reserve currencies. And then I think we will see derivatives markets start to explode in 2020 and beyond. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw the derivatives markets outpace spot by 2x by the end of 2020. And then to an earlier point I raised around some of the activity we've seen in consolidation on the exchange space, Binance as an example I cited, I think we'll continue to see much further consolidation on the exchange side and within the OTC universe, and we'll start to see clear leaders emerge within the space.
What surprised you the most in the last year?
In 2019, I was very pleasantly surprised by demand that we saw come forward for on-demand liquidity from the existing RippleNet customer base. For a long time, we had validated the value proposition for on-demand liquidity, both from market research and talking to our customers, but it was really just a breakout year for that product and customer adoption.
Was there an aha moment for you with blockchain and digital assets?
I would say my aha moment was with Chris Larsen back in 2013, when his vision for what blockchain and digital assets could enable, this internet of value, that was the real aha for me. And he described it as the internet of information has just always had this missing link for payments, and blockchain and digital assets solved the puzzle there. They kind of completed what the internet could enable. Fun fact is, in the designers of HTTP, the Internet Protocol, had an error code 402 for payment required. It was kind of a placeholder for them understanding that this would be something that technologists would have to solve in the future that was missing.
What do you think is going to happen with blockchain and digital assets next year and even in the next decade?
Yeah, so I'm gonna take the long view. So looking over the next 10 or so years, I think that we're going to see a similar maturation of the industry and just boom that we saw with the early days of the internet. And I think of it as, the 2000 to 2010, that decade. I know the early part of that decade was a bit of a hangover from the dot-com bust, but I think the kind of growth that we saw with internet businesses and how it just became the new modern infrastructure for communication and all sorts of new industries and verticals, I think we're going to see the same happen with blockchain and the internet of value in the next 10 years.
I thought that was a very good video for anybody, especially who has not been around for long, to let you see the bigger picture of what the vision is, and the people at Ripple are very good at explaining where this is all going. And so every once in a while, I like to watch things like that, and I like to rewatch them every once in a while. And I know there's a lot of people that are so new, especially during these current events, that are watching these videos that can benefit from that. One thing that I thought was fascinating that she said, she was referencing an error 402 from the internet. Now, I'm not a techie type guy, but the way I understood is that error 402 had something to do, I'll have to look it up, but something to do with the fact that you couldn't transfer money over the internet is the way that you could information. That's the way I understood it anyway. But anywho, that sounds like a good part of my title, Error 402. Okay, I wanted to finish this out by talking. I want to keep hitting this home, just so you know. This is what's going on in our world right now is terrifying, and so I want to make sure I keep bringing this up because there's always a silver lining, folks. Julia Chatterley says, we believe that about 70% of hotel workers have been furloughed or laid off. Chip Rogers, CEO of, let's see what this is, American Hotel and Lodging Association, says if we can get to normal occupancy by year end, we'll see 1 to 1.5 million jobs lost, but some of these hotels are never going to open their doors again. That is terrifying. Then I saw this tweet that also I thought was terrifying. This is just an average person. He says, my family owns a small construction company. We do commercial painting. First picture is our March bid calendar. The second is April's. This is their potential business in March. This is what their April looks like. I believe that the cascading effects and the layoffs and the things that are coming are literally terrifying. Now, folks, many of you are there's a lot of people that are listening to me that have either been laid off or will be laid off. You need to know that there is a way. I personally believe that digital assets are going to be one of the areas where people can benefit from a lot of destruction as this all goes forward. Okay, because I believe that there will be over the next few years a lot of money flow to digital assets, if for no other reason than because of the limited amount available. And I think what Brad Garlinghouse said in that video is you're going to see a lot of these digital assets that don't have utility. They're going to disappear and go away. But what that'll do is it will leave a smaller list of digital assets that do have utility. And so my point in telling you all it is if you're laid off, iTrustCapital, this is in the description of all my videos, and I've got a coupon code where you can get your first month free. This is a way, you don't have to roll all of your 401k, but if you're getting laid off, you have to roll your 401k somewhere. You can roll all or part into an iTrustCapital IRA, and it allows you to invest in digital assets such as XRP and Bitcoin, and you can have either tax-free or tax-deferred growth. And that is a big deal. And this may, for a lot of the people whose lives are being destroyed, this is maybe one of the handful of ways that you can make it back on the other side. I opened one myself. I'm not telling you I talk about things that I actually do on this channel. I'm the digital asset investor. I'm not an investment advisor. This is for entertainment purposes only. Please subscribe and hit the like button and tell your friends and family about Error 402. Thank you for listening.